As you can tell, we are in the truck this morning, not the tree stand. October 28th, and this does fall obviously within that 5-day window that I speak of, that 27th through the 31st. But a morning such as this is what creates a video such as this. I highly recommend, and what I always use myself and what I always tell clients, is to make the best of a high percentage sit, meaning you wait all year for this time of the year. I know I wait for this 5-day window, like I've said in the past, and the thing that we struggled with before in the past, 10, 15, 20 years ago, let's say, is we didn't have the opportunities that we have now to show us deer movement that we had to see from the stand, we had to see from the truck, from scouting, something like that. With the aid of trail cameras this day and age, take that and use that to your advantage for this inside of this 5-day window, and the next 3 or 4 days after that, going into November. And what I mean by making the high percentage sit effective is using the aid of trail cameras is a I feel sometimes, as crazy as it sounds, is an overlooked use of a very, very, very powerful tool. So this time of the year, what I find, hopefully what everybody is finding right now, is these scrapes are perennial scrapes, let's say, are blowing up. Everything is all these bucks that you maybe had during September that disappeared during October are back on trail camera, and they are active. A morning like this morning is a low percentage sit because we have last night we had some rain, and the barometer's low, and the temperature's high, and it just does not make for a good sit. So two things: one, your trail cameras; two, your aid of the extended forecast, the detailed forecast, and a app such as DeerCast. All that tied together, there's no reason to be in the tree stand when it's wrong. So where does that lead me to the center point of this topic, or this video? The center of this video is focused on having the buck that you're after, or the bucks in your area, whether it's on a licking branch or on a perennial scrape or a natural scrape. The object is to have him play his card. Let him tell you that he's what, whether that's on a cell cam or you have to go physically pull the card, and do that with caution, but let that mature buck play his card. Let him show you that he is moving during daylight hours, and once that happens, you have I feel, and a lot of times you have a 24 to 48 hour opportunity to make that happen. And why do I say that? That goes back to the video that I had at the beginning of the week here. Is the reason that you have a 24 or 48 hour window is because the doe he's with is probably in heat, or she's getting close. So the lockdown phase is going to happen in about 2 weeks from now, when maybe that doe that he's with is laying low, and she's, let's say, 24 to 48 hours outside of that window, or inside of that window of becoming in standing heat. Then that gets tricky as far as the waiting game, and waiting him out, moving some stands, getting in closer to those bedding areas such as that, hunting those rut only areas. This week's window, this 5-day window, 27th through the 31st, is a perfect time to let that buck show his cards. Once he shows his cards, you have 24 to 48 hours to make it happen. Hopefully, if you say enough buck prayers at night, hopefully the weather permits a high percentage sit. So use your apps, use your cell cams, use your normal trail cameras, pull the cards. Right now, I wouldn't overdo it, but I'd be in there checking those cards some way, somehow, about at least 3 days. I wouldn't maybe do it any more than that, unless you're trying to get him to, if it's the only camera you have in an area, let's say, then somehow pull that card like that every 48-hour window, if you can get in there. If you can't, then, do it on a 3-day opportunity. So, moral of the story here, moral of this video is let the mature buck show his cards. Once he shows that he's moving during daylight hours, you have 24 to 48 hours to make it happen. And make sure that you're scent free. Make sure that your boots are clean. Perfect time to switch from your normal PM sits to an AM sit. They're way more active in the mornings, pre-rut and rut activity-wise, than they are in the PM, my feeling, because they're more responsive to calls in the morning. So if you can possibly do that, if you can get out of work, if he plays his card, you can somehow be ready for that short window opportunity that you have. And like I said, it might be the only 24 or 48-hour window all season that you have to harvest him, because the next doe he might find, especially on small partials, that buck, if your habitat is not correct, he could be on the neighboring farm, and the neighbor could be doing what you should be doing right now, taking advantage of that 24 to 48-hour window. So I hope that helps. Use that in a strategy next time that you want to go sit that stand. You have a camera on there, you have an active scrape, you have a natural scrape going, the camera's on there, and he's still moving at that 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and he's not showing himself during the daylight hours. You'll know when he shows himself during the daylight hours, because the first thing you're going to have in that camera in daylight is a doe, usually. 75, 80%, 90% of the time, he's going to show himself, and the reason he's going to show himself is because he's there with a doe, or a doe has been there on their feet as well during daylight, and that is the time to make that move. So what does that mean for the guys that are not using trail cameras, one, or for the hunter that may be going to deer camp or trying a new piece of state land out or public land? Where does that leave you as far as trying to take advantage of that 24 to 48-hour window? So what I recommend is this. Just like moving a new stand, going into a new area, if you're not using trail cameras, the best advantage that you have in your arsenal is to, when you scout the area that you're going to, hopefully you've had the opportunity to maybe scout that by an aerial or experience from before, or whatever the case is. If not, if you're going in blind, what you need to do is the first thing you need to find, and you need to find it quick, least invasive, quietest that you can possibly do, is you need to find the entrance and exits coming in and out of your bedding areas. You have to know where these deer are bedding this time of the year. If you're hooking onto the camper for the first time, driving, let's say up here to northern Michigan from downstate, and you're pulling in, you're setting up camp, the odds are not in your favor. So the object is you have to know by an aerial, you have to know by somewhere where you're going into, because they're your wrong steps during on small parcels up here, or surrounded by small parcels. What you're going to find is, let's say you're hunting a 300 acre, 400 acre chunk of public land, and I can almost guarantee you, no matter where you're at in the country, you're not the only one that has hunted that, or you're hunting it by yourself. So you have to do a couple things. First thing you need to do is, when you're scouting these areas, you're going to be scouting them during the daylight hours. When you get there, you're not going to do it at dark. You're not going to hang a stand in the dark, usually. So what I recommend is this: go in, find these exits and entrances into these bedding areas. Like I said, that means that you have to know where these bedding areas are, and have to know where your oaks are, or your fields are, or stuff like that. And if you have the opportunity, go in, use that first midday. So if you're going to start hunting on a Saturday, if you're leaving and you got, let's say you got 4 or 5 day window, and your first day is on a Saturday, take that 11 to 1 o'clock time period, and focus on finding that spot. If you find them entrances and exits into the bedding area, you got to get as close as you can without getting busted, because you have to hang a stand or be able to bring your climber back in there to hunt. And find, perfect case scenario is to find a scrape on those areas. If not, get as close as you can to it, the wind in your favor, for the presumed for the forecasted next 3, 4, 5 days, whatever window you have to hunt, and make a licking branch, open up a scrape, start doctoring it. And if you're not going to use a camera, the only thing that you can do is keep those high percentage sits on your side. Use an app or whatever the case is to try to use high barometer. Hunt the weather, so when the wind drops, high barometer, cold temps, and that's what you have to go by. And then just keep tweaking your setup to take advantage. And once you hopefully lay eyes on a mature buck, you can move into him, get as close to him as you possibly can, and so he's there during daylight hours. That's the only opportunity that you have to make that work. So this time of the year, you still have to know where the bedding area is, still have to know where your feed is, because you're not so focused on where the buck's going to feed. You're focused on where the does are going to feed, and that's where he's going to be sooner or later, and hopefully that's during daylight hours.